I have a collection of antique baskets that I have hanging on my wall that I purchased in near the Little Colorado River in Arizona. And they're hanging on my wall, and when I lay on my couch, I look at them, and I'll just show you, like, they're various sizes, something like this. They're kind of flat baskets that have a little bit of curvature, up, but they're mostly flat. And I look at them and I contemplate them. And one of the things that I think about a lot when I look at them is pictographs and petroglyphs and geoglyphs of spirals. Spirals are a really interesting image because, of course, they're just fundamental to human nature that we make spirals. People like to say that spirals in rock art are merely entopic, meaning that it's a function of the eye when you're in trance that your eye sees spirals. And certainly it does. I've actually used some of these native substances that induce the shamanic trance. And I can tell you for sure that a lot of the things people say about what happens to the optical nerve when you're in this trance state is true. Different topic for a different day. But spirals are also symbolic in sacred geometry, in math, in the way that plants grow. Like if you look inside of a sunflower and you see how the seeds grow from the inside out. Spirals are just fundamental to nature. When you're looking at them in rock art, there's different categories that you can look at depending on what the panel represents. You can see it as, if it's a sky image, it could have something to do with the way that the stars rotate in the sky. When water circles down the drain, depending on where you are in the world, north or southern hemisphere, the water will circle a different direction. So that there's just kind of this natural feature of spirals. That's one way to interpret spirals in rock art. Depending on the context and depending on the people, you can look at other images on the panel and the placement, and it helps you understand that. Second is a concept of emergence and descending. It's a shamanic idea of emerging into a different realm, into a different plane of existence, or elevating your spirit. And that can represent emergence or descending. The opposite of emergence or transcending would be descending, going deep, going within. And one archaeologist I really like to reference is James R. Kunkel, because he did so much work with the symbols of the ancient Southwest as they're represented in pottery. And thank you to the Hopi and the Zuni, as they are descended from those ancient people who were the Pueblo. In fact, the Hopi and the Zuni continued to be Pueblo. They continued to live in the Pueblos and live the Pueblo lifestyle, just on a smaller scale than you see at like Chaco Canyon, for example. But Pueblo people are Pueblo people. And the Hopi and the Zuni are a great reference for the meanings, the symbolic meaning of things, of rock art images as they appear in pottery and basketry and rock art. So he's done a lot of work with these people in helping to understand one image, which is spirals. And a lot of times he says that if you read a spiral in a clockwise direction, it can mean, and the clockwise direction leads you to the center. That means it's this idea of descending or going within something. And then if you read it in a clockwise direction and it expands, if the spiral expands, that can mean transcendence or emergence. And then you take that concept and you place it within the context of the other images, and you understand the story that it's trying to tell. Now, depending on the culture or the context, the direction of the spiral, the way you read the spiral may not always be the same. The Navajo have wedding baskets that they say has meaning that you read from the image that's inside to the outside. Those baskets are constructed so that if you read the images going out and you're following the spiral to read those images, actually the spiral moves in a counterclockwise direction. So that it's just another context for reading the spiral. Another Pueblo era representation of the spiral is the breath of life, and you can see it inside a person. You can see it sometimes leaving the body. Sometimes you kind of see it outside the body. It can be the breath of life or the whirlwind of life. Another way a spiral can be read as a migration symbol. This appears a lot in really old petroglyphs. It's the ones that don't seem to make any sense. They're kind of squiggly lines and bubbles and spirals. So these have been interpreted as representing a place from where a person or a tribe came or a clan came. They went somewhere and then they made a full rotation of migration through that area and returned, did that route as many times as the spiral has circles, has concentric circles. And then, wherever they stop, that's where they stop in the spiral. Sometimes you'll see spirals moving, like a couple of spirals will start in one place and then separate and have their own little rotations. Those are interpreted by archaeologists and natives of the Southwest as being a place where two clans started, or maybe started as one clan and then separated and migrated separately and settled separately. Sometimes you'll see the spirals they meet again and reunite someplace. So what does this have to do with my baskets? This is kind of an exciting thing that I wanted to share with you about these baskets and how a spiral constructed basket seems to have a uniform method of construction, and because of that, probably a uniform significant symbolism, meaning when you're using the basket. So these baskets, most of them are pretty flat, but you can see that they have a curvature to them so that you can clearly see which is the receptacle side and which is the underside. Now, this basket, for example, if you follow the spiral clockwise, it gets smaller and smaller. And so this would indicate by our Pueblo era definition of spirals that this would be going within, okay? And I think that's interesting because this is the going within side of the basket. I don't think it's accidental that this basket was constructed in a way that this is the side you put things in, right? And then the reverse side, if you follow clockwise, the spiral gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Emergence, going without. And so the concept of emergence would be birth or expansion, growth, versus going within, versus placing something inside, going deeper. And then, so I looked at one basket and noticed it was like that. And then I looked at all the baskets and noticed they were like that. So this was obviously sitting on a shelf or something. It's an antique basket. So this side, the color is really rich. So that side was down. This was facing out. And so this is the interior side. It doesn't have as much of a curvature as the other, but it does have some. So this is clearly the receptacle side. And the spiral goes in on the receptacle side. And it goes out, out, out. On the expansion side, on the side you don't put things in. This one's a little harder to tell. Let's see, it's more curved. It's a little harder to tell. You maybe can see better on the back side. No, this side's better. But if you follow the coil, definitely the curved side is in. The expansion side is out. They're all the same. And I think this is just so interesting. I didn't look up if this is a thing about the construction of baskets, that they are meant to be constructed this way, but it appears as if that is in fact the case. I made a little piece of art, with this idea in mind. An owl is a complicated symbol in the American Southwest because it represents the dark side, which some people want to say is negative. I don't consider the dark side of anything to be negative. It is just the opposite. Duality. Our world is duality. We have light and we have dark, and the dark is the underside, the intuitive side, the side that maybe sometimes you have feelings you're not so proud of, but it's important to plumb those feelings, or you have fear feelings, and it's important to notice the underside of things, the dark side of things. And so I put on this little owl, the spiral that goes inward.
It represents looking inside, looking at the inner truth, embracing the dark as part of the light.
So I know in your adventures you've seen spirals. They're pretty prevalent. And I know you have a collection of them amongst your photos. And so as part of our Facebook group, Ancient Southwest, I would like to start a new photo challenge, and that is for you to post your photos of spirals in pictographs, petroglyphs, geoglyphs. And please share generally where you found these, what state, what area, and if you can provide any other context for them. What other images were around them, or even post the other images that were around them. Which direction do they face? How did they relate to the sun? Let's see. If you can give some context as to if they are placed over older images, that's kind of cool too, because it shows how different people visited that site, or how people of the same heritage reuse that site. A lot of times spirals appear with sun events, solstices, equinoxes. So post as much information as you can about the photos. There should be an album on Ancient Southwest Facebook group that will be called Spirals Photo Challenge. Post them in that album, and then we can all kind of share our experience and learn a little bit more about the nature of spirals and how they appear in different ways throughout the Southwest.